Pittsburgh Steeler fans, it is time once again to get that cure for what's ailing you. We're talking about the Steelers hangover. My name is Brian Anthony Davis. Alongside me is the guy who has the cure for your hangover. It's Tony Defio, BTSC Hall of Famer and Captain Extraordinaire. Tony, what is going on?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm, as I always say anymore, it's my over the hump day. I have 2 more days of work left, and then I can sleep for 2 days. But March is really killing me right now. It's coming in like a lion for sure. It's like 15 degrees out. At least it feels that way.
It is coming in like a lion. Will it come out like a lamb? We don't know.
It better.
Tony's saying that already. He's saying you've got to come out, and you've got to be nice and
you have
easy.
30 days.
That's awesome. So it is so glad to see all of you in the live chat. You remember what we always say: if you're here right now, you are a diehard Steeler fan, because man, it's February. No, it's not February. It's March. Tony just alluded to it, and I just completely ignored the calendar. Maybe I'm stuck in February, or maybe in my head I think it's February 29th. Maybe I think it's last year, and maybe I think it's a leap year. So, that's a good thing. It is right around the corner. In 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about it officially being spring, so that's nice. But guess what else is right around the corner? Decision time for the Steelers. You are going to hear a lot of us talking about what the Steelers need to do, trust in what the Steelers are going to do. They know more than what we know, sure, but we have our opinions, and we should, because we have that right as Steeler fans too to have our opinions. It's just not us who make the decisions. But here's the thing: we get to be GM today. Last week, we got to be GM with the running backs. We get to be general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers and say what we would do if we were addressing a certain position. And we're going to talk a lot about the free agents at a certain position. Today, we're going to talk about the center of attention. Usually that's the quarterback, but let's say center. Will it be in the draft? Will it be free agency? Is that center of attention already on the team? Who knows? Could Dave Schofield come out of retirement and go back to the offensive line and be the Steelers' new center? That's the things we're going to talk about. Will they bring back Fernando Velasco? Will they bring back your best friend, Justin Hartwig? Is that possible? We will talk about all of those things and more. We are going to tell you who we think will be the next center, or should be the next center of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the second half of the show. So we want you to stick around for that. So we will also have your opinions too. So if you want to throw your ideas in there as well, you want to wait till the second half, that's when we're going to do that. And we'll do Q&A as well. But first, Tony, big news today, big free agent news. And it looks like Derek and TJ's brother, it's some guy named Justin James Watt. Old JJ has a new home in the Valley of the Sun. What was your immediate reaction when you saw that JJ Watt is going to be getting about $15 million per year to join the Cardinals?
I was thinking what I thought for a while that there were so many teams reaching out to him that somebody was going to offer him a pretty big deal, and it was going to be pretty hard for him to turn it down. I think the Cardinals probably made him the best offer, and 15 million guaranteed is too hard to walk away from, even if you've made the kind of money that he's already made in his career. So that's the first thing I thought. And the second thing I thought is, well, at least I don't have to worry about hating him as a member of the Cleveland Browns.
I thought this is great news, and I still think this is great news. As time wore on in this whole process, it seemed he wasn't going to be coming to the Steelers. A part of me was like, he's a luxury, not a need for the Steelers. Right. And for that money, you can't afford to pay that for a luxury. This is a monopoly. You can't do the luxury tax and just get away with $75. You can't do that. Right. Things have changed. So when I find out that he's going to Arizona, I'm immediately, woo! He is not in Cleveland. Even worse, you know how I feel about Buffalo. He's not in Buffalo.
Right.
And even though it would have been the NFC, I did not want to see him to go to Green Bay either. There was just something about that I did not want to see. But with that being said, he is now an Arizona Cardinal. The Steelers won't see him for maybe 2 years because they'll play the Rams and the 49ers in 2023 again. So they won't see him for a while unless he's on another team by that point, or he's retired. They might never see him again at all. But who knows? Maybe they see him in a Super Bowl, but that's wishful thinking. And we can't play Go West right now. Hass H says he ultimately went to Pittsburgh West, and that's exactly where he went. But that's not what we're really talking about today. We're talking about the center of attention, and there was Steeler news, but it was old Steeler news, but it was new Steeler news. If you know what I'm saying, the Steelers officially placed Maurkice Pouncey on the reserved retired list as of today. So that's what's happened. We knew it was going to happen. So you're saying, bad, this is old news. You don't have to tell us about center. Well, I know, but it was made official today. So we need to bring that up. So as nobody is surprised, and if you're surprised by that, you're way behind. So you have a lot of going back to do. You've got a lot of podcasts to go back and listen to. Anywhere you download your favorite podcast, you'll find BehindTheSteelCurtain.com's family of podcasts. Go listen to a bunch of them. Then Absolutely. You'll get caught up. But I know everybody on here knows all about Pouncey being gone. But it's time to officially talk about his replacement. He's got to be replaced. There is no, if he comes back, he's not coming back. So let's talk about this and let's break this down. And I'm not going to look at the live chat right now for suggestions because we're going to talk about suggestions in about 15 minutes on the show. So what I'm going to do here, there's 3 options, of course. There's free agency, there's the draft, and there's the current roster, which is a guy who is an exclusive rights free agent, and that's J.C. Hassenauer from Alabama. And he has been with the team, I think, about a little over 2 years now. So, Tony, let's talk about Hassenauer first. Is there any region of your mind that thinks that they are going to give J.C. Hassenauer an opportunity to be a first time starter and go ahead and batten down the hatches and he's your man at center this year? Or are they definitely going to pick somebody or bring somebody in to be the starter? What are the percentages you think that JC will start the season as the center of the team?
I'd say right now they're probably less than 10%, but he did get some experience last year, so that's one thing he has going for him. And he has a new coach, and Adrian Clem. It's off season, but so he has a chance to he gained experience last year, so he could carry that with him into the off season, into the OTAs if they have them, and obviously in the training camp. But yeah, I'd say right now it's less than 10%.
Yeah, they're definitely going to bring him back. He's going to be there to be a backup. It seems like they don't expect him to be anything more than a backup. They'll give him an opportunity to compete for a job, but they're going to look for the future anyhow. Now, if you looked a couple days ago on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, remember, we're just not a podcast platform. First, before the podcast, we were a part of SB Nation, and we still are a part of SB Nation and on the editorial side. And if you go check out February 27th, the Steelers need to address center in both free agency and the NFL draft by Michael Beck. It's a great article. I would go ahead and check that out. And Michael thinks they need to do both. Before we get into the draft and free agents, do you think that they would do both? Would they spend capital on bringing somebody in and go high on a center?
I mean, I could certainly see them bringing somebody in as a stopgap. Somebody, remember last year they signed Stefan Wisniewski, and he was capable of playing both guard and center. So I can certainly see them bringing somebody on the cheap, a guy like that. And of course, yeah, you can address the center in the draft. It's just a matter of who's available in free agency, what the cap space is, and of course, when it comes to the draft, we still have a long way to go between now and the end of April. I mean, whose draft stock rises, whose drops, and what who's available when they picks, in what round. So yeah, there's a lot that can happen, but I can certainly see them doing both. I mean, signing somebody for the present and drafting somebody for the future.
Now, let me ask you this. This is probably a good place to start when we're talking about free agents, Tony. And what I'd like to ask you is, let's put a price tag on a center. Now, if you draft one, there's not a high price tag, so we don't really have to worry about that. Now, if you bring somebody in, you're going to have to pay a price. Let me give you a range of, let's just say, $2 to $12 million a year. Where do you think the Steelers should be if they bring in a free agent? Because this is their starting center.
I'm going to say around $3 or $4 million a year. Because Pouncey is making 10 million, something like that. At least that's what his cap hit was. So it's not something around the $3 or $4 million a year range for a short-term starter.
Okay, well, what if you get a long-term starter and you get a guy that could be here for 5 years? Like, a lot of people don't remember that they brought in a man named Jeff Hardings as a free agent, and he is not the he was a very good center. You talk about the top 3 centers of all time, he would, for the Steelers, he would be number 4. And he was very good. He's went to Pro Bowls. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer, but he was a very solid player. So this guy might not be a stopgap that they bring in if they bring in a guy like Corey Linsley. A lot of people have mentioned it already. Now, Pro Football Focus, that's who I use. Not everybody loves PFF, and I get it, but they have went ahead and put a price tag, a projected contract of a 3-year deal worth $33 million. So he would be $11 million a year. He's played with Aaron Rodgers with the Green Bay Packers. He is considered the best center on the market and perhaps in the NFL right now. If that's a guy that you could find money for, and let's not play the where you're going to find the money game.
Right.
There's no reason to do that, because if they want to find money for a guy, they will.
Now, how old is he?
He is he is a little older. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's 29. He's 29 and a half years old.
Okay. Well, there's a guy who's, if you can, if he's the best center available and he's still in the prime of his career and he's not ready to retire, well, you can bring a guy like that in if you can find the money for him and have him as your starter for the next 2 or 3 years. And you wouldn't have to worry about drafting a center. You could focus your draft, at least the top end of the draft, the first 2 or 3 rounds on other positions. If you can get a guy like that who's still a valuable commodity, then yeah, I think then you don't have to worry about drafting anybody.
So now he is also considered elite by Pro Football Focus, and his grades are from elite to high quality to above average. He grades out fantastically. He has been one of the most dependable centers in the draft. In the NFL since 2014. The guy's pretty good.
Right.
If they're going to break the bank on a guy, you want to break the bank on a guy like this. Like I said, you're not going to give him a 7-year deal. You're not going to give him that kind of money.
Right.
But $11 million a year for 3 years for a guy who is a Pro Bowler, who's a great player, he kind of fits the mold for the Steelers. Can they go that direction? They might not be able to. The most likely they can't. But you still have a wish list. And just like anything, if you're looking for something, if you're looking to buy a car, are you going to buy a cheap car that's going to last you, not going to last you at all? Or are you going to buy a car that you're going to have to move some finances around, figure out how to do it, maybe not get Netflix, not eat out every weekend,
right?
And you to go ahead and fit that in your budget to have something more dependable. If you're going to do that, Lindsley seems like that guy.
I just wanted to point out, Ezra, you mentioned Jeff Hardings. Ezra says it's unheard of to sign a free agent. Well, Jeff Hardings was a free agent signing, and he turned out to be successful for them. So yeah, that might be somebody. That might be a route you could take.
And they tried to do it last year, and it didn't work. So but Wisniewski wasn't brought in to be the future. Wisniewski was to be depth on that line,
right?
And if something happened, and something happened right away to David DeCastro, so he was thrust into play. Next thing you know, he's hurt too, and they end up cutting him. And if you saw the way he played in the Super Bowl, he didn't have the best Super Bowl either. He is he's on the downside of his career at this point, and that's a shame. But everybody gets to that point in a career. Now, if we're looking at some other guys in free agency, around the $6 million a year range is a guy like David Andrews. He missed the entire 2019 season. He came back and played well for the Patriots last year. When he was gone, they had an NFL legacy named Ted Karras. You might know his Uncle Alex, who punched out a horse as Mongo in Blazing Saddles. He comes from that family. I know you know that movie, Tony.
Yeah. It's I love the spoof movies. I love Mel Brooks. So yeah, I definitely know that movie.
Ted Karras he's a solid guy. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler. He's almost 28 years old. He could be brought to your team for about $4.25 million a year. Kind of fits in what you were saying, Tony.
Right.
You've got other guys on the low end, like an Ethan Posick or a Matt Skura. You can get guys like that for around $2 million a year, but they've been hurt. They have been underwhelming. So they might be guys that you would not bring in to carry you. Right. If you were bringing a guy like that in, you're probably going to go the Michael Beck route and draft a replacement. Some other guys you can get for about $4.75 million to about $6 million. Austin Ryder, who has been helping out Pat Mahomes all these years. Austin Ryder, you can get him for about $4.75 million. He is 29 years old as well. Right. He's a solid center. He's a better pass blocker than he is in the run game, which I know you need help in the run game as well. But, that's a guy to look at fairly cheap, but he's kind of a stopgap. Then you've got a guy like Alex Mack, who has been a fantastic center in this league, but he's 35 years old.
Right, yeah.
And you're probably not going to bring in a guy like that. So let's go back to free agents now. Now that we talked about that list. Now, there's some other guys too, Tony. But if we're going to look at a free agent and guys on that list, what kind of money are you pulling now?
I'd say you still want to stay in the $4 million range. My opinion is I think they bring in a short gap answer, a guy who could play a year or two maybe, and then you draft your center of the future and you hope he develops. I think that's the route they have to take based on their finances.
So what we're going to do is we are going to talk about those centers of the future and the NFL draft. We're going to do that when we come back right after this. And you are going to hear my opinion, if my opinion does matter to you, but who I think ultimately the Steelers need to look at in the 2000 21 draft to be the next center of the future for the team. We're going to talk about that right after this. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, just stick around, take a stretch. It's a 10-second break. If you're checking us out on any of our family of podcast platforms, all you've got to do, it's simple. Just click on over to number 2 of The Hangover, and we will be back right after this. Welcome back to the Steeler Hangover. My name is Brian Anthony Davis. Tony, I guess Anthony Julius Defio. I did not forget about Tony Jules.
That's it.
So he is along with us today, and we are hanging out with you on a Monday night. It is March, and it's feeling good. I'm laughing here because Zach I can't say your name, so maybe I'm not a good DJ, Zach, but Zach McClintock says, oh my God, Bad is such a DJ. It never left him. I was a DJ in the 90s, yes, for a top 40 radio station. I hope I'm not like a puke jock, because I don't want to be a puke jock. That's what we used to call the guys that were like, hey, it's 93.7 on your FM dial. I don't want to be that guy. So if I am, just let me know.
I can't believe there are still people out there like that. You still hear them on the radio. I'm like, don't you know people make fun of that now? It's like it's like the toupee of radio disc jockeys.
The toupee of radio. I love it. I was never like that. I was one of those guys. I was in my 20s when I did it. So and did I ever tell you what my name on the radio was?
I don't believe so.
I talked about it on the on not the retro show, because that we do that together, on the Tales from 2 a.m. the other day. But I was Brian Fox on the radio.
Oh yeah, you did mention that. Okay. Yeah, that's a good 90s name.
Yeah, I was almost Brian Malone. Do you know why I was almost Brian Malone?
Because you like Cheers?
Because I like Cheers. It was 1990 when I picked the name. They make you pick a name in top 40 radio. And the reason they make you do that is I got some really crazy mail. Let's just put it that way. And I got some really crazy stuff. Gosh, I'm not going to tell you what kind of pictures I would get in the mail, what kind of paraphernalia I would get in the mail from listeners. And the thing is, when you're on the radio, they can't see what I look like, so they could just hear the voice. And they would say to me, I mean, I was working midnight to 6 when I first got into it, and I'd be bored. So women would call up and they'd want to talk, and it's 2:30 in the morning and I'm playing the Spin Doctors, like, next up, the Spin Doctors. So, I'm doing that. I'm bored out of my skull. And so I'm just talking to them. And then it would always get around to, okay, what do you look like? And the answer every single time was, well, you tell me. And you tell me what I look like. And I got 2 answers every single time. And they would say, understand, back then I was probably about 150 pounds. I had a little longer hair. Not too long. It was the 90s. I had a mullet, I had the early 90s mullet. Then it turned into the sideburns of 90210. I could see you rocking the Dylan look there from 90210, Tony.
I wish. I never knew what to do with my hair, and then once I figured it out, I started losing it. So no, I pretty much kept it the same. I wish I would have done that. It would have probably been better off for me.
So I promise this is not a 2 a.m. story, Felicia. I promise you, it's not the Twilight Zone. But what it is, so I would say, you tell me, and I would get the same 2 answers every single time. I would get, well, you're probably about medium height, brown hair, brown eyes. I'd say, okay. I'd say, yep, you got it. And then 50% of the others would say, okay, you're about 6'4", blonde, blue eyes. And I'd be like, yep, that's who I am.
Wow. They were 6'4", blonde, blue eyes. Okay.
Yeah, that's far away from what I am. Ezra says that he had the kid high top from Kid and Play. I love it. House Party.
Wow, there's a blast from the past.
So anyways, Tyler's laughing. that I call it mullet. Isn't that what it is? Mullet? Or
That's what it sounds right to me.
Mullet?
Mullet. You know. Either
Mullet.
way, you know, it's pretty dated.
Yeah.
If you have one today out there, we're making fun of you.
I decided I was going to try one at the beginning of COVID, and then it got a little crazy, and I'm like, this just isn't me. So I had a mullet going for a little while, but it just wasn't right. If you go look back at some of those shows at the beginning of COVID, you'll see it. But let's get back to this. This is the most important thing. And we're talking about, hey, if we're talking about mullets or long hair, there's a guy that I think would be perfect for the Steelers. So I'm going to tease that a little bit more. But I think that they need to go the draft route. I would love to see them go Corey Linsley. But I don't know if they're going to be able to invest $11-12 million into a center that's 29 years old. I think it would be awesome, but I definitely think they're going to draft one. They don't have to draft one in the first round. We were talking about this last week. We were talking about this the other day. If they want a running back bad enough, if they want a corner, whatever they want, offensive line is deep enough that they can wait until number 2 or number 3. You don't want to wait too long, but you can get a very good player at number 2 or number 3. If you're going to go high on this, you're going to look at 2 guys. One's from Oklahoma. His name is Creed Humphrey. I think he's got star written all over him. I also am looking at a guy that is, he is your guard and center from the University of Alabama. You already have a center from the University of Alabama in Hassan, another guy, and that's Landon Dickerson. And I always want to call him Dickinson. I believe it's Dickerson, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way, not like tackle, where you have to, you won't have a chance to get, like you said, it's a deep draft for linemen, and they can probably find their center in the second, third round.
And I'm looking at 2 guys here that they could wait third round and get a quality player. And the first one is from the Ohio State University, and it's Josh, that they can get away with here and do very well. Is a mammoth of a man. He's a big dude. He's got long hair. He comes from your favorite school. I know you were a big fan of Wisconsin Whitewater.
Yes.
Back in the day, the green and gold of Wisconsin Whitewater.
That one year that they should have went to the Cotton Bowl and they didn't. They were passed over. I'm still upset about that. But if they can get a stud off that team and onto the Steelers, it'll make up for it.
When I think of Whitewater, I think of tubing. So I don't even know what their nicknames were. They the Rafters?
Yes.
the Whitewater Rafters.
Yes, that's what we're gonna go with.
So if you're gonna look at the Whitewater Rafter, his name is Quinn Miners. Now, he did turn a lot of heads. You're not going to sneak this guy because at the Senior Bowl, he turned a lot of heads. He looked really good. I watched a lot of highlights on this guy. He seems like a mauler. He seems like a Steeler, Tony.
Yeah, and that's how you have to do it. That's what you have to do. You have to bring somebody who has a lot of potential, and then you develop them, and maybe he starts right away. You never know. Like Pouncey, obviously, he was a much higher prospect with a much greater pedigree. But you bring him in, and you get him working with the coach, his position coach, and you see what you can do. But you can get that guy, like you said, in the third round.
Now, here's the thing. Before anybody comes in on this and mentions it, it's I do want to clarify. He's not officially a center. He's actually a guard.
Right.
But it looks like he is training to be a center.
Right.
And they're going to bring him in. So he's that hybrid guy. You can play him as a guard. You can play him as center. He's 6'3", 320. And he just seems like the guy that would be perfect. And who was that guy last year? It was Kevin Dotson. Now, Dave Schofield and I were having a conversation on the phone today. And that conversation was around, look, you're not always going to get a steal in the 4th round. This is not going to be the norm.
Right.
You're going to get a future 10-year, a possible 10-year player like a Kevin Dotson in the draft in the 4th. But you can sneak a guy like this in the 3rd, and a 3rd still considered a fairly high pick.
Right.
And I just think that would be a good way to go. Santa Claus says that's too big for a center. But you bring him in. Does he play guard? Does he play center? You look at a few things. You see where he fits best. And that might be the Michael Beck approach, to bring in a guy and a free agent and see what you have.
Right. And you don't know with Matt Filer, he's a free agent. I mean, if he were smart, he would market himself as a tackle in free agency based on how he played that position versus guard. So maybe you have to fill both center and left guard next year. You just don't know.
Now, Santa Claus says 6'4" can't be pulling like Pouncey did. That is, that has some merit. This guy, from what I saw of him, he has a lot of athleticism to him too. So that's somebody that you can talk about. So my thought is, if you want Najee Davenport, you could get him, and you can get your tackle in the 2nd round, your center in the 3rd, if that's the way you want to go. And I'm not saying that Najee Davenport, because somebody mentioned it here, I love Javonte Williams. I think that guy is a great way to go. I think he's rising up the charts too. I mean, you might have to hope to get him in the 2nd round now. So it just depends what's going to happen in the next few weeks. Everything could change and happen. If you decide that you want to invest in a cornerback and you have a great corner dropping to you, by all means, you can. Because this draft is set up, I feel it's a pretty deep draft all the way around, that where if you have a guy that you really like and he's there and he's not the position that you think you need, but if you're in a position that you can get the best player available, and I think they kind of are, where they can get the best player available because they need a lot of help in a lot of places. Now, I don't expect them to bring in a safety. They're not going to be bringing in a safety. I don't expect them to really bring in a defensive lineman as much. I mean, they could get some help on defensive line, but you could make a case, and a wide receiver. I don't expect them to bring in a wide receiver in the 1st round either.
No,
but you could make a case that almost every other position, they're probably going to be looking at the best player possible. If that stud tight end from Florida drops to them, my gosh, they could even do that. So there's so many things they can do, but we're talking about centers today, and I'm not saying that they could wait. You can't wait too long, but there's some value with guys like Myers and Miners that you could really do well with somebody like this. Your thoughts, Tony, on Myers and Miner? Or do you want to go higher for Creed or for Dickerson?
No, I mean, I think it'll be quite telling how they address it in free agency. If they just bring in somebody, like, who's that guy? And a very underwhelming free agent like they've been known to do in the past, then I think that tells you that they're going to make center a pretty high priority in the draft. And not necessarily in the 1st round, but certainly with a premium pick. So those are my thoughts. I think it's like we talked about in the first half of the show, in part 1. If you're not going to go high end, you're not going to get that guy that's making that you're going to have to pay 10 or 11 million a year. But you can't go too low. You can't bring in a guy and pay him $1 million or $2 million a year and say, okay, you be our starter. It's got to be, if you're going to go to that $4 or $5 million a year range. Then that's somebody that you would think is going to be here for a couple of years, but you can still get a center and high in the draft and groom him to be your future center.
Now, Wes just asked if I thought they should bring in Kyle Trask. I don't know if he was talking to me or somebody else. I mentioned Florida. I'm talking stud tight end from Florida is who I am talking about. And there is definitely a guy out there that is projected around maybe player pick 15 by the name of Kyle Pitts. I think Kyle Pitts is the guy I was talking about. If you can if a guy like that drops, you might be thinking about a Kyle Pitts. But there are so many different directions that you could go in the first round of this draft. So, like you said, you could go center, but you want to make sure that you have the right one. And if somebody from another position is right, then you can probably get somebody with your third pick. And that might be so much better. Now, a lot of people are mentioning how Dickerson is the injury history on Dickerson. That might be a buyer beware because he's had a lot of problems with injuries. So,
well,
you know,
it is a crapshoot.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's a couple people that mentioned bringing back BJ Finney. I'm not looking at a retread there, bringing back a guy like that who couldn't get on the field couldn't do much with Seattle, ends up getting traded to Cincinnati and really can't get on the field there. So with that, there's so many possibilities, but not Finney.
No, I mean, you know, if you would have asked me about BJ Finney last year at this time, I would have said, oh, absolutely. He's you can bring him in and be your stopgap guy for maybe even a couple of years. I mean, he came up under Mike Munchak. He really seemed to get the most out of his abilities for being an undrafted free agent. But, you know, everything that happened with him in Seattle is really puzzling to me. And that was his chance to break out, and it just didn't happen for him. So you have to wonder why. And maybe, you know, like they say, there's a reason for some guys are good fill-ins, but never great starters. Like they used to say about Mike Easter, the old Pirate. They always wanted him to be a starter, and every time he got his chance, he really couldn't produce. He was much better as a backup.
The Hitman. I used to emulate his. He had the craziest batting stance.
Yeah.
He would stick it out. Oh, Mike Easler was great. So I tell you what, let's spend the last couple minutes of the show. We can go ahead and take some questions, comments. What I'm going to do, and I'm going to go ahead and take the next couple, and then we're going to get on out of here. Reginald Rivers, I love this. I agree with you on this. Bad, you don't take the garbage out of the house and bring it back in. So
that's the funny part about it was he wasn't garbage when he was here. He was really good, but it was in limited exposure. And once he got his chance in Seattle, I guess it just didn't. I guess he was exposed.
Whoa! This I know. I got to bring this up.
No way.
No, when I said the Hitman, I was talking about Mike Easler. That can't be true. I mean, did something happen to Bret the Hitman Hart in wrestling?
I didn't. I would. My cousin's a huge wrestling fan. I would have heard about it if that was the case.
No, I think there might be some mistake here, but no, Mike Easler did pass away. The Pirates Hitman. So right. I just got really scared there, Ezra. Mm-hmm. You got me really scared. So Bad says hit the gym. Santa Claus says Bad hit the gym and get on Barry Bonds' workout routine, and you can suit up in the BJ Finney pants. Here's the problem. I talked about the BJ Finney pants yesterday. You know who told me this on our interview when we had the exclusive interview with Zach Banner? He said you can't. I mean, you would be shocked how thin he was downstairs. His legs were so little. Those were size 38 pants.
Right.
I was shocked they were size 30. He's like a 300-pound man. He's huge. So up here, but there, I couldn't fit into those pants. I had problems, and I've been losing weight too. I was shocked. I need to find a bigger pair of pants. Thanks, Mean Joe says Irv Cross passed away. I did not know that. Great. Man, he played for the 49ers, but he was just awesome with CBS Sports. I remember.
Oh, yeah. That
He
brings back
and
my childhood memories.
Brent Musburger, Irv Cross. Oh, yeah. I got to tell you, that stinks. I hate to hear that. Rest in peace. Ezra says, my bad. Yeah, you had me scared. Yeah, now I have to look that up. Now I've got to check all that out. But let's just go ahead and we're going to wrap it up with Lumberzack. I'm having trouble here. Lumberzack says, I like Jeff's take, really. Not sure if he still thinks this, but in a show he mentioned that they should potentially triple dip. A true free agent center signing, someone who's versatile like BJ, and draft. I don't know. Maybe he does feel that way. I got to tell you, though, I think I like the Michael Beck approach with a free agent center signing, draft someone, and just do that, because I think you have a guy in J.C. Hassenauer who you can keep. Look, you don't have to throw him away. He can be your backup. And not only is he your backup at center, he's your backup at guard. So I kind of... Go ahead, Tony.
And you can see how he develops. You can see what he learned last year. He struggled last year. There's no question about it. But look who he was filling in for. He's filling in for a potential Hall of Fame center. So, maybe the difference looks so great to us watching, but maybe, if you look at it with reality, okay, maybe this is never going to be a superstar, but maybe he can develop himself into a starter somewhere down the road. Maybe last year was his foot in the door that he needed.
And we will see. Well, Tony, we're ready to wrap it up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to be back here next week. We're going to talk about a different position on the team. And I think really what we could do is, Tony, I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do, but we might just be turning the corner with this one.
The punter.
Long snapper.
Get rid of Jordan Berry once and for all. I don't know what the heck it is. He won't go away. He's like a fly in the car. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, I let the cat out of the bag for next week's show.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Tony, what are we going to do? But hey, thanks everybody who showed up today. I mean, it is so great to have you here with us. We appreciate you. We cannot do these shows without you. You're our BTSC family. We absolutely love you. I'm speaking for Tony as well as myself. And for Tony Defio, my name is Brian Anthony Davis. We ask you to please be safe, be true to yourself, and always be behind the steel curtain. And just when you think you know all the answers,
we keep changing the questions.